Good morning, podcast, and welcome to a new episode. My name is Pierre T. Lambert. I am here, your host, and today with me, I have a very talented guest, and his name is Emmett Sparling. Okay. Emmett is a travel photographer and videographer. He's had several films awarded through different competitions. We'll get into that a little bit. He's worked with some of the best brands in the world that you may know. We're going from luxury to cars. And before that, you were actually a fashion photographer for a little bit. So there's a lot to unpack here in this episode. And I really want to get into some of the stories, also how you got there and what's happening now. We've traveled, I think it's the second big trip we do together. And there's always something to be learned from either working with you or just seeing you work. That's always a pleasure. So Emmett, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the intro. Just for the record, not so much luxury in cars. That's like the
Lexus is
true. Lexus is one of my main partners, I guess, but mostly adventure travel.
I think that's what people know you the most for. But I do see those car shots and I'm like, ooh, this looks good.
I will say it is a fun little side thing. And it is fun to pursue new types of photography like that because I kind of just got into that pretty recently. But
really? It seemed like it's something you did for a long time, no?
Not really. Like I had some car photos that I had taken a while ago, and I kind of used those random car photos that I had taken as kind of a media kit to pitch to Lexus because I wanted to buy a 4Runner. So I pitched to Toyota. I was like about to buy one, and I was like, why don't I just see if Toyota wants to work with me?
Yeah.
And so my friend works with Toyota and he gave me a contact. So I emailed them and they were like, oh, we don't have any ambassador spots with Toyota left, but we have them with Lexus and Toyota owns Lexus. So I was like, that works.
That sounds terrible.
Oh no, not a Lexus. And so they got me set up with a Lexus and then in exchange for photos of the car. So which is a pretty sweet deal. And so I've just been diving into automotive photography more and more. And since I have monthly deliverables for them, I kind of have to constantly be coming up with new concepts. So I don't just give them the same photos over and over again. I just have to keep experimenting and trying new things with car photography and kind of seeing what other car companies are doing for their photos and try and figure out how I can recreate them with no budget by myself and like maybe a driver or something, which has been pretty fun because it's actually easier than you think to make a really high budget looking image for just you and your camera and a polarizer.
Oh,
like downtown or something.
There's already a secret polarizer
and a whole bunch of editing.
And I think the editing plays a big role for that.
Yeah.
How did that come about? And do you feel like travel photography, and we'll get into how you get into that, but do you feel like travel photography helps for the car photography?
I think it all just kind of, every type of photography helps in different ways with each other because it's all about just learning how to use your camera. And if you know how to use your camera well enough, you know how to work with light well enough, you're going to be able to come up with a good car photo after a bit of practice, just because you know how to work with the subject, work with light, composition. And it all is, like, in the end, it's all fundamentally the same, but it's something that takes a bit of practice. But
interesting. Well, let's dig into the travel photography, which you're known for. You actually released a few NFTs around that of art, which did really well. So we'll link to everything in the show notes if you guys want to check out Emmett's work. How did travel photography come about, and what was first, photography or travel?
Definitely photography. So I started, should I just go from the beginning of my photography?
Absolutely. Start at zero. You came out of
I first picked up a camera in probably grade 7.
Yeah.
So that's like 12 or 13 years old in Canada. And I was bored sitting around the house one day and my mom gave me her camera. She was like, go outside and take photos. And so I was like, okay. So I went outside and started taking some photos of just horrible photos of like grass, tree bark, some leaves.
Beautiful.
And then I posted them all on Facebook, and I got this one comment from some guy that I didn't really know, but I kind of knew him. And he's like, "These are awesome, man. Like, keep going." I was like, "Huh, that was kind of cool. I'll keep taking some photos." And then kept taking photos, turned into macro photography.
Yeah.
So just I'd be finding bugs in the garden and shooting those. And eventually that kind of morphed into me taking photos of my friends and coming up with like conceptual portrait ideas.
Yeah.
So we would like get my friend in a dress and put her in a lake or something in the freezing cold in like January in Vancouver and just take some mediocre photos. But it was all part of the process of learning how to do all that kind of stuff. And then that eventually turned into, so I took photos with one of my friends who was a professional model.
Yeah.
We were in high school together. This was probably grade 12, so final year of high school. And she, after school one day, we took photos. She really liked them, so she sent them to her agency, and her agency liked them, so they hired me for some test shoots and that kind of thing. And so I started taking photos for fashion stuff, started doing more editorial work and that kind of thing, and started working with a lot of the agencies in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And then
how old were you then?
I was 17, turning 18.
Whoa.
I was about 18 years old. So I did that when I was 17, 18, and then into 19. And it was fun because you could come up with all these different creative ideas. It kind of felt like a movie set.
Yeah.
Like you're like the director, but you're the photographer, and you have your like hair and makeup, stylist, model, lighting, and maybe you'll have an art director or something.
Yeah.
Which kind of felt like a movie set to me. And I love making movies. And I was actually doing that before I was taking photos. And so that was kind of felt like a short version of making a movie. Is you come up with this whole set and this whole theme of like, for example, one shoot we did, we had a rowboat and we filled it with all this old nautical ropes and giant pulleys. And we had this guy, it was for some like, kind of like Sperry or something, like a nautical fashion brand.
Okay.
So it was like a cable knit sweater or something and that kind of thing. But it was like high fashion still.
Yeah.
And so we just created this whole theme. We had like sunrise on this lake with mist, and it was super cool to just come up with this whole set in the middle of a lake and just kind of turn this creative idea into a reality. And I think that also helped me practice a lot, coming from a pre-production idea to actually fulfilling the idea.
Yeah.
And then from there, after about 2.5 years doing that, I was kind of like, there's a lot of big personalities in fashion. As I started to take it more seriously and get bigger with it, like I went down to LA and shot with some people down there, started doing shoots for Guess and a couple other companies like that. It kind of was like, oh boy, there's so many like egos in fashion.
And a lot of
just like
ego fights.
Yeah, a lot of ego fight. Everyone's just trying to size up the next person.
Yeah.
And I probably had 20,000 followers at this point, just from posting portrait fashion stuff. And so like models would come to the shoot and just be waiting for me to tag them in their post or in my stories or something. And it just, I was like, okay, like, why am I doing this? So I basically saved up $4,000 or $5,000 and then went backpacking.
Ooh.
So I was like, screw it, I'm going backpacking. I went to Mexico, to Oaxaca, Puerto Escondido, kind of down the West Coast, and then to the other side, to like Cancun, and Holbox Island, a couple other spots, Mexico City. And then I did that I was in Mexico for 2.5 months, ran out of money, flew home, and then took photos in a glass tile factory. And
that's quite a change.
Yeah. And basically
not too much ego.
Yeah. It was pretty dry, but they actually helped me buy my like 5D Mark IV. So I was shooting on 6D before that. And so shooting there, I basically traded all the work I did shooting there for a new camera.
Yeah.
And then obviously a bit of money as well, so I could keep traveling. So I went back to Mexico and then did 2 more months in Mexico. because it was, I guess, all I knew, and it was easy, and I knew how to travel there and backpack, and the hostels were fun. And then my parents, for Christmas, they bought me a plane ticket to anywhere in the world.
Wow.
So they're like,
anywhere.
Well, I didn't want to make them go broke.
Yeah.
However, I did choose for them to buy the most expensive flight in my journey, which was from Mexico to Bali.
Wow.
So I flew from Mexico, LA to Bali, and then did 4 months in Bali. And that's kind of where everything started with the adventure travel stuff. So that's where I met like Jordan Hammond, Connor McCann, and a couple other guys down there.
Yeah, we had Jordan on the podcast also.
Sweet. Yeah. So Jordan and I kind of had started talking through Instagram when we had probably 5,000 followers, and we just started taking photos. I was taking almost all portraits, but started to get into landscape travel stuff. Jordan was also the same, just starting to get into travel landscape stuff. And then we just met in Bali and started backpacking together for like 4.5 months. And that was kind of a whole mindset shift for me, because it was like, oh, I'm not backpacking with backpackers anymore. I'm backpacking with another photographer. So we both want to get up for sunrise. Yeah. We both understand that that's the best light, or we both want to get to these photo spots. Whereas when you're with backpackers, they're like, why would I wake up at 4
go drink and then wake up at 10?
Exactly. So Jordan and I were on the same wavelength, where we were like, we want to actually get to the sunrise spot and actually take the photos. And so we started getting way better photos, because we were also learning off each other, like bouncing ideas with each other and teaching each other little things in Photoshop, stuff like that. And then we kind of just like met up with other people, and that kind of just momentum just kept rolling. And it taught me to, like, at the time, it was right when Beautiful Destinations put out their whole campaign for the world's greatest job.
I remember.
Yes. And so Jordan and I were both like, that would be so sick if we were part of the BD team, and it looked like the coolest thing ever. And so we were just trying our hardest to like get noticed by
They were so popular back then. I remember.
Yeah, they're
like a dude thing you wanted to be posted on.
Yeah. And so I remember Jordan went on a trip with them, and I think he started to kind of realize like, oh man, that's like, they work you hard at Beautiful Destinations. And so we were just like really focused on that kind of thing. And I think what we ended up learning was, like, looking back on that, is growing with your peers is way better than trying to grow with your idols. Yeah. So like, let's say we did start working for Beautiful Destinations. Yeah. I think we'd be way further behind than if we just kept trying to work on our own and try and get there ourselves. Yeah. Because what we didn't know at the time was that we were really pushing for, like, we were actually learning how to do this whole thing on our own. Yeah. We weren't actually trying to get to a point where do it for them. Yeah, we were trying to get to a point where they would notice us. But in reality, we just got to a point where we were able to, like, fully sustain a living doing exactly what we would have been doing with BD, but on our own terms, which is ultimately way better. Yeah. And so, I think that was a really cool thing looking back on that. It's cool that we were able to do that. And like Jordan and I, like, after Bali, we went to Europe and road trip to Europe together for a couple months in a van. And then we flew to Japan right after that and did Japan for a month. And the whole time we were like just growing together at exactly the same pace. Like, we hit 100,000 followers on the same day. Wow. Like, we were just like, like celebration time. And so, did you guys, sorry to interrupt, did you guys start in making any money by that point in order to continue traveling? All the jobs we were doing basically only paid for the trips. Okay. So this is 2017. Yeah. And everything that we would make would just be funneled straight back into travel. Okay. Or it would just be free trips. So for example, the road trip through Europe, the van company gave us the van in exchange for photos and story shout-outs and stuff. And so we did that. And then on the side, I was also taking photos for Sackcloth and Ashes, their blanket company. And so that helped to fund in some way. Walk around with a blanket? Yeah. So I had to film basically I would carry a different blanket around with me on each trip. I think in Europe we had 6 or 7 blankets because they wanted a video with their blanket. So like, I think it was a 1-minute video in each country that we were going to. And they would pay me like, I think it was $2,000 or something per video. And at the time that was like, hell yeah, like $2,000. And I can just bang out these videos, and we're in Europe. So you can hit a different country like every week. And so we just started traveling around like that. I was filming a ton of little videos for Sackcloth, and that really helped fund that whole like chunk of time in my career, basically. Was having Sackcloth support me like that, because they were like my very first brand deal. And then it kind of just started snowballing. So like the people that you meet when you travel and start putting yourself out there and posting, and you start getting more connections, that kind of snowballs. Like, oh, I'm in Japan this month, and then while I'm in Japan, this company reaches out to me, and then they want me to come to Hawaii next, and I have to figure out like, oh, they can pay for my flight to Hawaii and then the return ticket to Vancouver or something, so I can kind of get home like that. So it kind of became a game like that. It still is like that. Just trying to figure out how you can get around the world for free, basically. And so, and it was all just like portfolio building and just really grinding to just try and make it and make more money, and to be able to continuously travel. And so that was like, I was home maybe a month a year and just traveling, taking so many photos, making so many videos. And it like, I think if I wasn't more passionate about it, I would have completely burnt out. And if I was older, I would have burnt out as well, I think.
Interesting.
I was only like 19. So it's just so easy to just like, my body was invincible. I could just sit on a plane forever and then hike a mountain immediately after, and like nothing would happen to me. But yeah, it was just like unlimited energy, basically.
That's amazing. What was a turning point for you when you're like, this is really working and this is a career? Because I imagine there's that feeling of, this could too good to be true, and suddenly you're like, well, maybe we're bigger than we think. So basically, when I got home from Mexico that first time, when I worked, before I worked in the glass tile factory taking photos, I wanted to go to film school out of high school. Didn't get accepted into any film schools. And then, well, the ones that I wanted to get into were like way too expensive to try and get into. It was all the ones in the States. Anyways, then I kind of had to, so I took a gap year, went to Mexico in my gap year, and I kind of had to make a decision, like, do I use like any of the scholarship money that I had in school and put it towards university, and because you can only defer it 1 year or something. So I deferred it the year, and I was like, okay, I have to make a decision. Do I go to university, go to film school, or do I keep pursuing traveling and photography, which really seemed like the bad idea. It's like, I don't want to be broke for my entire life, but this is also really fun. But I had never traveled before. I had only gone to Mexico, hadn't met any other photographers. And then my mom said to me, do what you love and eventually the money will come. So like, wise, I'll give that a go, see what happens. So I did. And then it took probably 3 years for any actual money to start coming in, like good money. So I think the very first job that I got that was like, oh, I could actually, like, this is actually good enough money to survive beyond just putting everything back into backpacking. So I shot the campaign for the Galaxy S4, I think it was at the time. So Samsung, I think, they didn't tell me this, but I think their main photographer must have dropped out or something. Because they reached out to me like a week before this massive multi-million-dollar campaign for their phone. And so I was in Turkey in some cave in Cappadocia or something, and they were like emailing me asking for a treatment and all these things. I'm like, what the hell is a treatment? Like, I'd never done any of this before. I'm like trying to talk to my mom to see if she can send it to them, because I don't have good enough Wi-Fi in this freaking cave in Turkey. I'm like, can you help me do this? And so
Samsung flew me to to Spain to shoot this thing. It was in Spain and Portugal. And the whole campaign was shot on the Galaxy S4. And so they flew me in. It was like a kind of a James Bond style movie where I landed, get out of the airport, get picked up in a blacked out Mercedes. Like no one talks to me. They're just like holding a sign that says Emmett Sparling or something. They open the black Mercedes door. I get inside and I get driven to this 5-star hotel. They're like, Mr. Sparling, just hand me the room keys. Don't even need to check in. Take me upstairs. There's just an envelope with my name on it filled with like 1,000 euros in cash. I'm like, huh. Like, I'm a secret agent now, I guess.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then
was there a new ID also?
Yeah, a new passport. And so that job was probably a week and a half of shooting every single day with this horrible phone. That was like, the camera was decent, but it was the beta version. So they were still programming the camera while I was using it. So they had this head technician there. I'd be shooting like, oh, there's grain in this top corner. Hand him the phone. He hands me a new phone 10 minutes later that he had tweaked. And then I wasn't allowed to put the phone in my pocket ever. I had to hand it to someone who would put it in like a Faraday cage type bag and then just like seal it. So the phone couldn't be leaked to anyone. And it was all very top secret.
Were you shooting on your own?
No. So I had there was a hair and makeup van. There was a catering van. There was a costumes van, like full production size vans.
Was there a talent also?
Yeah, there's talent. And I'm using this talent as a silhouette way in the distance of this landscape photo. They don't need to be hair and makeup and costume. Like they can wear anything. It'll be fine. But I think what it was like was because the head executives of Samsung were there.
Yeah.
So, and they were the ones who were paying for the whole shoot. And so the agency that they had hired in Spain wanted to show the Samsung executives that they were spending the money that they'd given them. So they just went all out and spent a ton of money on these shoots. Like one day they rented out an entire amusement park. So when I was one in Barcelona that was like above the whole city, they rented the whole place out. They got like 400 extras dressed in just basic clothing with no logos or anything to just fill the entire
that's crazy.
The entire place. And we were on merry-go-rounds and everything, taking all these photos with the phone. And then we didn't use a single photo from that shoot in the final selection. They probably spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on that whole shoot just on that day.
It's ridiculous.
And then like all the Samsung executives are like going around in the merry-go-rounds and just having the best time ever.
That's hilarious. It's crazy.
So funny.
That's something that's always like surprising is to see how much budget they actually have versus when they reach out to you and they're like, you do that for $2,000.
Yeah, exactly.
You're ready to hire someone to take me in a black limo to my hotel so I could take a bus,
Yeah. But yeah, so that job kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, there is real money in this industry.
Yeah.
I could do this. And that job also paid for pretty much 9 months of travel after that. Because I still just put everything right back into traveling. Didn't save a single penny of that job.
Well, I mean, in a way, it's like at that age, you save to travel anyway. I used to save to travel. So
that was still like, see it as it was me investing in my future, which was to keep traveling, build that portfolio more. Because then later, so that was at the very end of 2018. Then in 2019, that's when things started to pick up a bit more. And I started getting more like sizable jobs that were definitely, there's a lot of, so 2019 was basically make as many connections as possible, travel with as many different people as possible, do as many jobs as you can possibly fit in and just work your ass off. That was what I was doing all of 2019.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty good way to burn yourself out. Just like travel with the most random people that you don't get along with and just see who you like. That whole thing. It's important to do, but
sounds like when they say throw ideas on the wall and see which one sticks.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just did that for pretty much all of 2019 just to see what happened. And it went well. It was fun, but definitely not a sustainable way to work or travel. So 2020, I guess no, that would be COVID. I think I'm talking about 2018.
Yeah.
Or at least half of 2018 was kind of like that. And then 2019, I started to figure out a little bit better who I like to travel with. It's all kind of mixed in year by year. But so somewhere in 2019, I started to slow down a bit more and was like, I'm only going to travel with these 10 people.
Okay.
And just try and stick to that crew because we work really well together. We know how each other operates and can travel. So it just makes life way easier. And then by doing that, you can also start coming up with more creative concepts for jobs and start pitching better things, and you just end up working way better.
Yeah.
And you can kind of slow down a bit. You don't have to be in a country for 3 days and then just keep bouncing around like that.
Yeah.
It's more just like, let's spend a month here and actually make something really meaningful or really cool. So I started doing that a little bit more. I was living in Bali at the time. So I kind of had a home base there with the whole crew of people around that I was just traveling with and coming up with cool ideas and stuff. And then 2020 came along, COVID happened, and everything started to shut down. But I think that whole mindset of just stick to the people that you work really well with was really helpful in that stage of my career because it just helped me not burn out. Yeah. Because if I had kept traveling like I was prior to that, it would have been a lot more challenging to keep that sustainable.
Yeah. And especially when you travel, you spend a lot of time with people. So you better get along.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, for anyone listening, if you've not tried, just travel with people where it's slightly off. Yeah. Not fully. Just a little bit.
Where you get along for the first 3 or 4 days. And then after like 2 weeks, you're like, I hate everything about you. Even though you're super nice and chill, mostly, I cannot be with you for long periods of time. Like that kind of thing it's
difficult. And that's something I remember when we met in 2020 in Polynesia. So that was the first time we interacted. Actually, guys, we're in Polynesia right now. At the end of our trip, like 2 weeks plus, and we were on sailboat on a cruise ship and like in remote islands. Beautiful. But I remember specifically even what I think I shared that with you, or at least I talked to Chelsea. It was the first time I met you, Chelsea, in real life. But I remember after I was like, so easy to travel with those guys.
Yeah.
Like they're ready to wake up at 4, to go shoot. No one's ever complaining about it. Like literally no one was ever complaining. And then ready to shoot at night also if needed. And I think just having that flexibility and going with things is fairly rare.
And the other thing I would throw in there is people that don't drink very much. Drinking alcohol is the biggest way to just burn yourself out when you're traveling and trying to shoot at the same time.
Yeah.
Like if you were to have even just like a beer or 2 every night, it's just so, like eventually that just makes your sleep worse. It just makes everything just start to go downhill. And I think like it's obviously fun sometimes, but doing that while you're traveling and working is just the easiest way to just kind of self-sabotage.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember like, throwing a lot of days out because of that when I was very young. But I was a photographer.
When I was living in Bali, that was like, oh, there goes a whole month of my time. Just partying.
How did you get into the filmmaking part? Because you did like really cool shorts with Chelsea when we were there. I mean, you guys created 3 shorts. I was a boom mic on one. So proud of my boom mic expert. I'm joking. But you might have seen, if you're listening, the behind the scenes of even when you were shooting and like all the photos we got. But I remember you too had such a precision in what you wanted to shoot. And a laser focus, like this is the exact shot we want. This is how we're going to get it. How did you arrive to that point? Because I imagine it wasn't, if you're doing photography, it's also very different from filmmaking. So how did the filmmaking come?
So I started making films before I got into photography.
Okay. That was first.
That was first. But like at the same time, the films I was making were just horrible. They were
I feel like,
but obviously they're horrible. It's like you're starting out. So I started because every year my whole family at Christmas time would do an activity of some kind.
Mhm.
And so one year, this activity that we did was make a stop motion film out of Lego and like plasticine or something.
Yeah.
And my uncle is in the film industry, so he kind of knew how to edit it all together. So we made this short film, just stop motion. I was like, oh, this is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I was like maybe 10 or something. And then I just got our family point and shoot, went out with some friends, made this little action movie thing. I could probably find a link for it.
Oh, really? We're going to put this, we're holding that.
And so that was kind of just like my first step into making these little home videos and just funny action movie things. And I really enjoyed doing that. And then in grade 9 at the middle school that I was at, grade 9 was the final year of the middle school. And in your final year there, you get to choose a project to do for the full year. It's called Masterworks. And so you end up spending the whole year focusing on this one project. And I chose to make a movie for that. And so they bring in like external mentors to help you. And I had
That's so nice.
Yeah. So I had these 2 mentors that were like really established in the film industry on Bowen Island. Well, they were established in the film industry, but they lived on Bowen Island.
Yeah.
Is where I was living. And they kind of helped me along with it. And I ended up making a short called Between the Lines. And it's set in World War I. And it's like in the trenches. And we went and dug a trench in this like muddy field on Bowen.
Really?
Got a fog machine and just smoked out the whole place. And it actually looks pretty sick. We were shooting on a like Canon T4i. And all the costumes were from Value Village. The helmets were paper mache. And like, it was very run and gun, but it honestly looks quite good for.
It must have taught me so much because if you have a year to prepare, you can actually make your costume.
I was watching some of the behind the scenes of making it. Yeah, there's all this video of me trying to direct it.
Yeah,
I am the most clueless person on earth looking back on it. I'm like, holy crap, I was a horrible director. But obviously I was in grade 9.
Yeah.
But I think like that definitely taught me a ton.
Yeah.
Of how to make some kind of a short film. Like, for example, when I first started making that, I was like creating all these dialogue scenes between the characters and the soldiers. And then once you start making it, you realize creating outdoor dialogue scenes with like 5 characters is so hard to do. Just cut it down. So just cut it down. There's no dialogue in the whole thing. And then just trying to tell a story with no dialogue and everything is a much more realistic goal to try and do with your film. So we did that. And then from there I went to high school, and then in high school so it was in grade 11. I'd made a film in grade 10 that was fun. It was called Somnium. It was kind of an experimental film that was set in medieval times. My friend Shane and I made it in a week and just ran around the island with my friend Rachel, who was dressed in medieval armor and had a sword. And she's basically trying to find the heart of the earth. It was just some experimental film, but it looked really good and it was really fun to make. And so in grade 11, I was like, okay, I want to do another film like that. What's a cool story I could tell? And so this is the one about my dad. Brainmaker. So basically the day after my parents announced they were pregnant with me, my dad had a seizure and was diagnosed with an inoperable malignant brain tumor.
Wow.
And so how he coped with that was he imagined he was an astronaut. And so this film follows that story, and it's half set in space in his imagination and then half in reality in the hospital. And so now he's 23 years clean of cancer, 24 years clean of cancer. And he basically just put himself in this mindset of, like, for example, he saw the the parallels between being an astronaut and being a cancer patient.
Yeah.
And they're both at the pinnacle of human knowledge and achievement. Like
Yeah.
everything that the people around you are trying to do is to keep you alive.
Yeah.
And all human knowledge is trying to keep you alive in the various aspects.
Yeah.
And then it's also the parallel of like you're getting needles poked in you all day, tests run on you.
Yeah.
But the main difference is that an astronaut has the mindset of, hell yeah, let's do this. Let's go to the moon. Whereas the cancer patient feels like he's going to die or he's got it terrified. And so, well, the astronaut actually has a way lower chance of survival too. Like
It's true.
So the odds are not in the astronaut's favor, yet their mindset is confident, is excited, all this stuff. So my dad put himself in that mindset of, hell yeah, let's go to the moon.
Okay.
Even though he was dying of brain cancer. And so the film follows that story. And so that was a pretty ambitious story to tell in grade 11, I imagine, as a third film ever made. But we crowdfunded $20,000 for it.
Wow.
Which was huge, but it also disappeared really quickly. But at the same time, that basically allowed us to do what we did. And like, for example, we built a full-size Mercury space capsule in my backyard, like, which actually looked pretty sick. We built a full control panel that all the buttons lit up. We like soldered the whole.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
We had all the dials.
You still have it?
Yeah, my friends got it in Calgary.
Wow.
And then NASA has all its spaceship blueprints royalty free online.
Yeah.
So we just downloaded the Mercury spacecraft blueprint and then just made it to the exact measurements that the actual spacecraft is. We just built a frame out of wood and then put like car floor mats over the whole thing, aluminum panels, and then we cut out a window and had rivets and everything. And then it was kind of a cross section. So it was like basically the spaceship cut in half so we could shoot inside half of it. And we rented a spacesuit and we rented a whole bunch of hospital equipment. And then we turned my old middle school into a hospital.
Wow.
That had the like linoleum.
And they were cool with that?
Yeah, it was summertime. So we were shooting in the summer. And the headmaster of my middle school was one of my advisors on the film that I did in grade 9.
Yeah.
So he was stoked on it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're still making movies. Let's go.
Let's go.
So he let us shoot in there for like a month in the summer.
Yeah.
And then we had like, it was a crew of probably 20 people of friends and family that I just like gathered and like, you come help. Like, I need someone to hold a boom pole. Like, so that was really cool. It turned out really well. I would like, if you want to watch it, it kind of gets slow in the middle. There's tons I would change because I was like 17 when I was making it. But the last, I'd say 7 minutes of the film is really good.
We'll link it below so we can watch.
Yeah. So it's about a 20-minute long film. And then I think I was 16 or 17 when we finished that. I was in grade 12, which meant that I was still young enough to enter it in student film festivals, like high school festivals. And it destroyed, like, every festival we put it in, it won every single award.
Oh my God.
I remember I went to the BC Student Film Festival and they started announcing the awards and they announced like Emmett Sparling, Brainmaker. They bring me up and they just hand me a box and tell me to sit at the front. And then like 10 more trophies.
Oh my God.
And they're like these big Oscar style trophies and they're just loading up this box. I'm just sitting there. Everyone else in the theater is just like,
we hate it. How did it feel at that moment for you?
It's like, that was cool because it was like, oh, all this hard work I put in actually resonated with people. And I think that's definitely a driving force in the stuff that I create is like, yes, I'm doing it because I love to do it. But the whole other aspect that I love about it is showing people the stuff that I make. Yeah. And just seeing their reaction or seeing how it affects them positively, hopefully. Yeah.
Try to make creepy movies yet.
No. And so that, like, I think that was definitely one of the biggest film projects I'd ever done. I think it still is probably the biggest film I've ever done because it was 20 minutes long. Yeah. It took a whole month to shoot, and there's complex dialogue. It wasn't set in some beautiful travel destination. It was like actual movie sets that we had to build and like create a hospital environment or create like a whole spaceship. So that was something that was pretty challenging. And so I basically put that whole side of what I love doing on hold, just because I'm like, that was a ton of work. I want to go travel and start getting more into photography. So that's when I started doing more photography and focusing on that, just because it was a lot easier to do and it was a lot of fun. And I pretty much just enjoyed it just as much. And then I had gained skills with a camera to be able to work with video. I knew how to edit. So I was able to travel and take travel videos now as well. So that's kind of how that all started. And then basically photography took over for a couple of years, and then I started doing more travel video stuff recently. And then I think the beginning of 2020 or even 2021 is kind of when I started getting more into the short films again. Yeah. And so this year, my goal is to make 6 short films, and I want to just dive more into the fictional concepts and just like come up with these fictional stories that have no real world anchoring. It's more just like these cool stories that I want to tell that are just fun to make, and kind of go down that path a bit more.
Have you, this is something that strikes me because those projects are so long, like you said, 1 month to shoot, building everything, shooting, then obviously
like Brainmaker, I think
editing.
Brainmaker was 2 years start to finish. So
so that's like
really
crazy. Would you still nowadays, now you have like more popularity with the photography and it works and you make an income, all that, would you take that time, like would you do that again?
I think it depends on the project. I probably wouldn't do a 20-minute film right now.
Okay.
20 minutes is like, that takes a while to make.
Yeah.
Especially for like a fictional thing like
if you're building from not like,
whereas like an adventure film where you're documenting is a lot easier to hit that 20-minute mark. But
try a vlog and you
put it. A vlog is like, you can hit 20 minutes easy. But so creating a fictional film that hits 20 minutes and keeps the audience entertained for the full 20 minutes is really hard to do. So I've started just doing that, but on a more micro scale. So I've tried to just really master the 3 to 4 minute mark. Okay. And just try and really nail keeping someone fully glued to the screen for 3 minutes, and just trying to tell a really complex or really meaningful story in 3 minutes. Try and create an emotion in a 3-minute window. And
I think that's key. Personally, there's a lot of travel videos. I'm like, meh, whatever. Yeah,
exactly. That's kind of the reason I got into more of the storytelling side and the creating these fictional films and stuff, was because travel videos get so repetitive. It's just like, here we go. We're in Bali again. Here we go. So I think creating these fictional stories was definitely, it feels more fulfilling. Doing that kind of thing, just because it's fun. Like so after Norway, which is going to be more an adventure style film, I'm going to go to Oman, and I'm going to film a medieval comedy. Wow. Or at least I'm going to try to. So me, Josiah Gordon, Carl Shakur, Connor McCann, we're going to go to Oman, and there's this market that we found last time we were there that sells full suits of armor.
Oh, wow.
We're going to buy a full suit of armor, and we're going to put Josiah in this full suit of armor, and we're going to go out to the desert, and we're going to film a comedy about these 2 explorers that are looking for like I forget what the treasure is called, but they're looking for treasure. Yeah, they're looking for treasure out in the desert, and they basically, so they find it on this map, they find it, they start digging, and then they realize it's protected by the desert knight. And so the desert knight comes out of the sand and climbs out. And so we're just going to bury Josiah in the sand, and he's going to climb out in a full suit of armor. And then it turns into like, he takes his helmet off. He's just coughing up sand. He's like, oh God, like I've been here for like 700 years. Like he's just like, it just completely goes downhill from there. And it's going to be hilarious because Josiah is like this tall, skinny dude, and we're gonna get a suit of armor that's way too big for him, and he's just gonna like it'll be hilarious just seeing it spiral from there. But we've written the whole script for it.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
we've got everything lined up, and we're going to try and shoot it in probably beginning of May. It's going to be pretty funny, I think. Josiah is hilarious, and Carl's hilarious. So
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, so that's the next fictional film that I'm going to do.
That's amazing. That's I love how you actually take the time to do those, and that's something that, well, personally, in my own, I do YouTube videos, like in case no one knew, but it takes a certain mind space. But the moment you're trying to create something crafted from A to Z, is really actually a different way of thinking, and you kind of have to put everything aside. At least for me,
Yeah,
even if it's a 30-second ad, which sounds ridiculous, but even just doing that, I had to put everything aside because I don't have the bandwidth in a way to
yeah,
like
exactly.
this, and I want to get the shot, and I want to get the BTS at the same time. It's just not possible.
I think what really helps, something that I've really noticed and like learned pretty early on, I think, is don't try and do everything yourself.
Yeah.
Like delegate, and it makes your life so much easier.
It's true.
So like take on the director role if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
Don't take on director, cinematographer, writer.
Yeah.
Even though that is pretty much everything I do.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like, depending on the scale of the project, you want to just delegate as much as you possibly can. So for example, the Desert Night shoot, I'll probably be acting in it just because. And then Connor is probably going to be filming.
Yeah.
Carl's probably going to be acting in it. And we'll have someone else shooting behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be trying to do everything at once. So it'll be a lot easier in that sense. But yeah, I think that's something that I see a lot of people struggling with, is trying to do every single thing, and because they want to do everything, which is fun, and like doing everything is important to learn, but at the same time, your life is going to be so much easier if you just get a crew of people to help you.
And it sounds like through your own experiences, you've always had that support, or like had help in a way or another from the first one you said like 20 people got in, the school was helping in a way, just providing it. I mean, you were like asking at one point, someone had to ask somewhere.
I learned early on in high school, suck up to your teachers just a little bit. Get them to like you, because then you can pull out that card later on. It's like, hey, you want to be in my movie? Like my art teacher, for example, my high school art teacher played my mom in the Brainmaker film. She like took a month off her summer vacation to be in this film.
That's perfect.
So yeah, then my old English teacher played my dad in the film. I just like, pulled all the strings from high school. It was great.
That's great. Yeah, I think, in high school, there's a lot of resources, and the teachers are, I think they're passionate at the beginning of the career. So if you can reignite a little bit that passion about like, oh my God, some kids want to do stuff.
Yeah, and I think if teachers see that their student is passionate about something and really wants the teacher to be involved, then I think they really like it also.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I don't want to take up too much time because we're going to be in the dark within 15 minutes. But what kind of advice would you give to someone who is older, not younger? Because I think your story is a good example of, but like if someone's older, from your point of view, what would you say holds people back in those, and what kind of tip or advice would you give them
for like starting in the travel industry, or
going after your following that photography or even that filmmaking? I feel like filmmaking has so much more friction than just photography, because
filmmaking is definitely a bigger undertaking just because it takes a lot more effort. What advice? I think there's always some kind of barrier to entry, where whether it's a mental barrier or a physical barrier, it's always like, oh, I'm not going to have time to do that. Oh, I would never be able to do that. Or, oh, I don't know how to use a camera well enough to do that. It's like, if you've got a really cool idea or something, like some of the best films, like it doesn't matter what the video quality is at all.
True.
If the story's there, it's going to be amazing to watch.
Yeah.
And if you know how to tell it just from, like, if the story is strong enough, it doesn't matter what the filming is, but that is not the best advice. I think,
Well, that's one.
I don't know.
I think
That's maybe one piece of advice, but I don't know. I'm not
would you
very
start,
old.
let's,
So
let's try like that. Would you start with small project, or would you actually
definitely.
commit to something bigger, because then you're more committed in a way?
No, do
No.
not commit to something huge at first.
Okay.
Yeah, start small, because that's going to be where you see the biggest progress.
Okay.
So, and by seeing progress, that's how you're going to get more stoked on it. You're not going to get burnt out, and you're going to just you're going to stay interested in it if you can see progress. It's like going to the gym. If you go to the gym for 3 months, you see no progress, you're not going to want to keep going to the gym. But if you start seeing progress,
3 months, that's already good.
yeah. But if you start seeing progress, you're going to want to keep going. So start small, and that allows you to kind of keep building off these smaller projects. So like what I'm doing this year, try to make 6 short films in this 3-minute window. So maybe next year I can start making like a 15-minute short film or something like that. So starting small and then really mastering your craft with that those small projects, whether that's photography or video or whatever it is. And then you can start building on those skills and take them to these bigger projects that you might have down the road. So for example, like in 15, 20 years, one day I want to make Brainmaker again, but with like a $20 million budget or something, and like a full feature length film of it. I think would be really cool. But before that, I have so much that I need to figure out how to do before I just go look for $20 million to make a film.
That's fair. 20,000 the first time.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that was one element. What was the other one I just had? Start small. Master your craft. So I noticed this a lot with people, especially on social media. They want to get from picking up a camera to making a bunch of money and traveling. Yeah. They don't really see how many hours you need to put in to actually getting good at photography. Like I've been doing this since I was like 12 years old, taking photos. And I've like my 6D that I had, the shutter eventually shattered because I took 20 photos on it. And so I looked at the shutter count on it, and it was like, it's like 500,000 or something. Whoa. Which is way beyond what they have. Yeah. So but I did the math. I was taking like 400 photos a day for 3 years or something. And that's not with the A1's burst. No, it's not with burst mode. So that's a lot of photos. Yeah. And that's pretty much practicing every single day. Yeah. And that was only my first camera. And I've had like 5 cameras since then. Yeah. And so that is kind of the amount of work you got to put in if you want to actually succeed at this, or if you want to like stand out, and like you got to have that drive. You have to have the passion. Otherwise, you're not going to get all the way there. Yeah, I see what you mean. There's so many baby steps that no one sees. Yeah, it's like, not all talent. The result. It's like some of it might be talent, but it's definitely mostly hard work, and just like talent comes after 10 years. Yeah, talent comes after 10 years of hard work. There you go. That's a good quote. I mean, every time someone's like, "Oh, you're so talented," I'm like, I don't think you saw how much I worked on that. Yeah, exactly. I'll take it. Yeah, totally. Overnight, bro. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, there's like a million directions I would love to go deeper. We'll do around to 100%, because just the story of your family and I feel like your parents, you were saying that they backpack, your grandparents were backpacking with your parents. Yeah. I feel like this just also like run through your blood. And like, my parents a lot. My parents are definitely very supportive of it all, and very, like, we're very similar. So like my mom, she was born in Zambia because my grandparents were backpacking through Africa in the 1960s. That's crazy. And then my mom, like when my mom was 18, my grandparents took her and her 2 younger brothers backpacking through India for like 6 or 9 months or something. Wow. In 1980. which is like, they said they're the only white people in the entire
I can
place.
imagine.
So it was a completely different world. And then they went backpacking through Asia and all these other places. And then my dad, his parents died when he was in his early 20s. And he took that inheritance money and went backpacking and traveled a whole bunch. And then when my parents met each other, they bought a Westphalia, a camper van, and lived the van life for a couple of years.
Before it was trendy.
Before it was trendy. They drove to Alaska. They did all sorts of things like that. And then, so they were very, very traveler-oriented people.
Do you feel a bit more hardcore than you?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting there.
You're getting there.
My grandparents, though, they are hardcore. Like, so I went, part of that trip in Mexico that I did, very first trip, was my grandparents. I was with them. And so we were backpacking together through Mexico. And they'd like get an Airbnb that was in some shed, like in the back of some field of some place in Mexico, and just be totally chilling. And I'd be like, oh my God, like,
what are we
I need a hotel. But they're not like crazy travelers. And now they look at all the places that I go. And they're like, oh, how's Japan? And then they'll book a flight to Japan. And
that's like amazing. I love that.
Testing all these places for them now.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. Emmett, we have to wrap up. It's totally dark now.
Yeah.
But thanks a lot for sharing. I definitely want to dig deeper on a lot of things. I think it's fascinating just to learn how you grew up and like how it's influencing the work you're doing now. If you guys have not seen any of Emmett's short, absolutely go watch it. One of their, I'm almost featured. I'm joking. But there are 3 we made while we're in French Polynesia that you and Chelsea made. One last question before we wrap up. Do you have a tip for people who want to write a script? Like, do you write it on, do you have a software? Or do you have a notebook? Like what do you use?
Well, I'll give you a rundown of how I make a 3-minute film.
Okay.
Because you can't just write a script and then go make a movie.
Yeah.
There's a little more that goes into it. So I'll start off with a rough concept.
Yeah.
Like just a brief sentence of what I want the film to be about. And then if let's say it's a narrative film. So I'll write a narrative, and then I'll time myself reading it. So I try and make sure I hit that 3-minute mark.
Yeah.
And then I go through each line of the narrative and figure out, just visualize shots that could go with each line of the narrative. And they're just like really like pretty obscure shots that aren't set in stone. It's just kind of like a shot of Josiah slowly floating down in the water. Yeah. It's like that can be shot anywhere. You just need some water that's clear enough to see him or something. So pretty ambiguous shots that are easy to get. And then that's kind of your shot list and with your narrative, and you go out and you try and shoot it. Yeah. And you try and get all these different shots, and then you try and piece it together. And then obviously while you're shooting, you're going to get better stuff that you didn't plan for. Yeah. So that helps to take the film to the next step. And then from there, the editing is super easy because you have your script next to you and you just plug in all the footage of each shot that you've written for each line of the narrative. Yeah. So you record the narrative first, you have the narrative there. Then for each line of the narrative, you just plug in all the footage, and editing becomes so much easier. Yeah. So that's a narrative film. And then a more fictional film with like dialogue and a different style like that, like Voyager, for example. That one, I wrote it in Pages. I just downloaded a template for a script, like script template or whatever. So it could be more of the traditional movie script format, which just really lays it out really clearly of how to write a script or keep it in that format. And then I basically just wrote it and then read it back to yourself, make sure the dialogue sounds like actual dialogue. Yeah. Because that's something that is so obvious when it's written dialogue. Yeah. When you read it back, it doesn't always sound like actual people talking to each other. Like people interrupt each other. They stutter, they have these gaps in their sentences, whereas sometimes the dialogue sounds absolutely perfect, Pierre. Like,
Absolutely. Yesterday I was at the shop.
oh, what kind of shop were you at?
It was the shop that was on 4th Street.
Oh, my favorite shop on Florida.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, it just sounds robotic. So you want to read it back, make sure it sounds real, and then come up with a storyboard. Really, really helps.
Yeah.
So I'll, like, for those fictional films, I'll actually storyboard it, and then just try and stick to that storyboard with the actual script in my hand. So you have the shot list, you have the storyboard, and you have the actual script on set with you while you're shooting it. And then that makes it so you don't miss anything and there's no holes. Because it's so bad when you get to editing and you've missed a shot and you're just like, oh no. Like,
What are we going to do?
exactly. So that's pretty much how I write the two different styles of films.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Everyone, please go check out Emmett on Instagram at
Emmett_Sparling.
Emmett_Sparling. Link is in the description to all the show notes and in the description. Link is in the show notes to all the shorts and to more infos about Emmett and his work. Emmett, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
And on to the next trip.
Yeah.